the first pick.
Thunderstruck! Thunderstruck! Yeah, Thunderstruck!
Welcome into the Fantasy Rant podcast presented by Stadium Rant. I'm your host, Sam Baker, and I got the boys back. We didn't know if Lee was going to make it. He came straight from the hospital, basically. But Lee is here to talk about the last week of the season for the regular season for fantasy, along with Mason Beck. We're going to cover all starts and sits in week 14. We got you guys covered. We're not going to hit all of the players. The starts and sits that are super obvious, we won't have to get to. We'll talk about it. We'll brush over about it a little bit. But before we get into it, Lee, you had a little bit of news from the our redraft league.
Yeah, I was just going to touch on both real quick, and I'm just going to
Okay.
say, this. I don't want anybody comparing this to the Michael Jordan flu game, but if somebody else says it, we're out here, playing hurt.
I've heard whispers.
So for the Dynasty League, just to touch on it real quick, Dan and I are both sitting at 14 and 12. This is a median scoring league, so you get 2 wins, 2 losses, or split. We're at 4 and 6. Both could make the playoffs. We're 2 games ahead of the 7th place team, so things would have to go really bad. Although Dan looks like he would be in trouble with the tiebreaker, so he needs to split at least get 1 win this week, and he'll be in.
The thing is, too, that's the guy who I played against last week, and he beat me by, my team had a bad week. His team beat me by about 86 points. So that's about the difference in our point score on the season right now. So that's great. Love that for me right now.
Yeah, that's painful. We'll just touch on my buddy Sammy. He's been the number 1 team all year. He took his first loss in 11 weeks. He had a 20-0 run in a median scoring league, which is quite incredible, sitting at 23-3. And I've told him all season, it's a great regular season run. When he loses in the playoffs to my 500 team, it's just going to hurt a little bit more. Mason is bringing up the rear at 6 and 20. He's playing for that number 1 draft pick this week. We'll see what kind of lineup he sets.
Hey, I will say, though, my team honestly was awful at the beginning of the year. It's kind of been picking it back up a little bit. I've got a lot more hopes towards next year. Funny thing is, though, Dan is talking about how he needs this win. I am playing against him this week. Hoping I can beat him, but I will say in a super flex league, when I'm at my quarterback position, I'm starting Sam Howell, and that is the legit best option because I have CJ Stroud, Bo Nix on bye, and then Trevor Lawrence, who, we all know what happened to T-Law.
Hold on, so that's your only quarterback?
Yeah, Sam Howell is legit my best option. The quarterback
QB1, not for your super flex spot.
No,
QB1.
at quarterback. Yes, in the quarterback position, Sam Howell.
If you don't get 1 win against that, Dan, you don't deserve to be in the playoffs.
The saddest thing is right now I am projected to lose to him by 1.1 points. I have Jonathan Taylor on bye. Christian McCaffrey was one of my other running backs. I have Zay Flowers on bye. Zach Ertz shouldn't matter too much in most leagues, but this is a 4 tight end league or a 4 flex league. So would have thrown him in one of those flex. I got McMillan, Tolbert, and Abdullah in 3 of the 4 flex spots. Worthy's the 4th. So it's rough, man. This is rough sledding. Got a lot of injuries on the squad. And the ones that have already happened, Stephon Diggs, Rashid Shaheed, which Mason traded me Stephon Diggs and a 3rd for Wan'Dale Robinson in the 2nd. Got 3 weeks out of him before he got injured.
Yeah, and then the 3rd was from 2026 as well, which I think at that point I'm going to be a lot more competitive, so it's probably going to be more on the back end. So.
You can't be much.
You didn't want to give up anything. You wanted Diggs, Wan'Dale, and Wan'Dale and 2nd for Diggs. I at least got you to throw something in there. But, no. Right now it's an L no matter how you spin it.
Oh, yeah, no. It definitely was a good trade for me.
So we'll hop to the redraft league. Just to point out, I just noticed this. The same two guys who are 1-2 in our dynasty league, which is Sammy and then Louie, are also 1-2 in our redraft league, just in reverse order. So,
Good player.
two guys not on the show are kicking our asses right now. But we'll
Right.
see what happens when the playoffs come around, fellas. We got Mason at third, 8-5, guaranteed to playoff. No chance at the bye, so he'll be playing next week. I'm sitting at the fifth spot at 7-6. Technically, I haven't clinched, but the two people that are within a game of me play each other this week. Before we touch on that, Dan is in the cellar at 4-9.
Yeah.
He
This is my last league to draft, and I always tell myself, hey, don't diversify too much. And I just take players that I didn't have. And this is by far my worst team.
got to mix it up. I mean, hey,
yeah,
at least you get the first pick next year. No, this is redraft.
Yep, nope, that didn't happen. Fixed up the league I was supposed to tank in, right?
Yeah, I mean, true that.
I can't tank. That's impossible. I can't do it.
But the story of this league, Jackson Cook, my son, in his first fantasy league ever, has clawed back from 0-4. He was 3-7 after that. He's won his last 3 games. He's sitting in the 7 spot, playing Brandon, who's the 6 spot. They have identical records. So whoever wins gets into the playoffs. He's got a chance to come all the way back, get into the playoffs, and then crush Mason's dreams next week. So he's super excited. He's already said he's going to be pissed if he loses this week. So for the sanctity of my household, let's hope Brandon takes the L and Jackson can get in those playoffs.
That's really cool that they got the head-to-head for the winning in. That's awesome.
I honestly want to say this with my team, though. I'm 8-5 in third place. I have the third most points scored, so pretty accurate. But I do have the most points scored against me, and the fact that I'm still 8-5 with the most points scored against me, it's got me feeling pretty good. I mean, dude, Saquon has just been money all year. Like, I mean, he's doing what CMC pretty much did last year. It hurts saying CMC's name now, but I mean, just him. And then last week, I actually beat one that he was in first. Now he's in second. Same record, first and second. I actually beat him last week by like 6 points because Josh Allen threw a touchdown to himself, and so it counting as a receiving touchdown as well is what got me the points to get the win. So that was pretty cool.
Which is probably it's the correct scoring, but is that not the most ludicrous thing you've ever seen in fantasy football?
Oh no, it really is when it's like like a 7-yard play, and you get like 14 points off of it or whatever.
All right, let's get into it, boys. We got a lot to cover today. Even though there are going to be 6 teams on bye this week, terrible time to go on bye. And hitting a lot of fantasy rosters here. But let's get into the first game. Green Bay at Detroit. Detroit is favored by 3. Over-under is high at 51.5. We like to see that for fantasy. I have Jordan Love currently as a start. Either of you guys disagree with that?
I have him as a sit, and I am a Jordan Love believer, but it's kind of just been a rough year for him. He hasn't been putting up the greatest fantasy performances. Detroit's a tough defense. It's going to be a division game. I think it's going to be very gritty, low scoring. I think the yardage might be there, but it's really going to depend off of the 2 or 3 touchdowns that they score that game. Is it going to be Josh Jacobs or is it going to be Jordan Love? I don't see Jordan Love throwing in 2 touchdowns, so I don't really see it being the greatest game for him.
I'm on the start side, and I mean, I think obviously the Detroit pass defense has gotten a lot better this year from what it had been, but their run defense is still top notch. I see them shutting down Josh Jacobs. They're going to have to throw the ball to keep up. We know they're going to score some points against that Green Bay defense, which is better than expected. But I see a lot of passing attempts, which should result in at least a solid baseline. I'd be surprised if it's not at least 35 or more passing attempts. And out of those, I think he'll be efficient enough to be a start.
That's the thing, too. So, like, the past few games, he hasn't had a lot of pass attempts. 17, 23, and 28 from week 11 to 13. But they played Chicago, San Fran, and Miami, and both at least 2 of those 3 games, they had a commanding lead for most of it. So they didn't really have to throw the ball that much. Still ended up with it over 250 yards and at least 1 touchdown in 2 of those 3 games. I think he has the efficiency, and Detroit is a pass funnel defense who is facing a lot of injuries to their defense right now. So I think he's a start. The next guy we're going to talk about, Josh Jacobs. I think he is a more limit expectations with your start, but he's the start. You can't sit that guy right now. Way too much volume, way too much touchdown opportunity. Jaden Reed, we all got as a start. Mason had him as a flex, but you're putting him in your lineup regardless.
Yeah,
Christian
no, I mean,
Watson,
you are
sorry,
putting
yeah,
him in. You're just hoping for the touchdown. He's there's just some shaky weeks, you know. I think if you do have a more better, like I honestly just sat him in our redraft league. I'm sitting him for Shakir this week.
yeah. I mean, against the Rams, I could see that being a bit of a shootout at least. I would still go Jaden Reed personally, but he's only had 3 receptions or less in those last 3 games with the low passing volume. And you had Love as your sit, so it lines up. All right. Tucker Kraft would be the last Packer we would talk about. We all have him as a start of some sort, though. I think another limit your expectations. Lions are 3rd best against the tight end position when schedule adjusted. So let's get into the next side of it here. We're basically all in agreement, though. We're starting every Lion. There's not much to it. I would say Laporta, touchdown dependent, low end tight end 1 with that upside if he gets the touchdown. But
I do
that's
want to
the other.
say this though with Laporta, the last 3 weeks he's been getting a little more targets. Obviously, last week only like 3 receptions for 6 yards, but his target share is actually going up a little more the last 3 weeks than compared to what we've seen at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
So that is a little more hopeful. Obviously, last week those his stat line is a fluke week. Nothing's going to happen. He's not going to have that stat line probably ever again in his career, but
Right.
at least the targets are going his way.
Yeah, yeah, and that's to be. I mean, Jameson Williams came back in week 10, and in the last 4 of those 5 weeks that Laporta played with him, 6 targets. One had 3 targets, but 6 targets in 4 of those 5 games. That's solid. So start your Lions. It's a solid matchup. They're division rivalries. That game's gonna go hard. Next game on the docket, we got Jacksonville at Tennessee. Tennessee's favored by 4, over under on the other side of things, 40.5 points. Trevor Lawrence, not sure if he's going to be starting this one, even if he
Trevor
does.
Lawrence is announced out for the season. That happened not that long ago. I think it
Oh,
was around an hour ago. T-Law was announced out for the season.
okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the right move for them. What are you gaining?
Oh, season's over. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, we're
it's
definitely
Mac
not going to
Jones,
be
baby.
trading Mac Jones. Definitely no Mac Jones. So, we all got Etienne, Bigsby, and Brian Thomas Jr. and Parker Washington as a sit, and that was even with me thinking Lawrence might start. And then I do have Evan Ingram as a start. He just gets the easy dump off targets. He's not going to be great if you're in a PPR league, though. He's going to give you that performance that's not going to kill your week. Even if the opposing team's tight end has a great week, you can get 10 points out of Evan Ingram. Titans side of the ball, me and Lee have Will Levis as a like risky streaming option. Basically, Lee has him as a start in the super flex. Mason has him as a straight up sit. Mason, do you want to talk about I mean, I get why, but do you want to talk about why?
I mean, I don't know. I guess with the amount of buys there is, I kind of would lean a little more. I can get what you guys are saying. It's just uh I've trusted, Will Levis is the I mean, I don't know. It's Will Levis. Like,
That's kind of why I get it.
unless it's the perfect matchup, I'm not really doing it. And even
That's
though
why though, it's the
Jacksonville
perfect
has not
matchup.
been, yeah, I know it's Jacksonville, but division game. I don't know. Just when it's a division game and it's a quarterback that, um, you know, is not that great. you can expect a lot of, a little better defensive play. I mean, just look at that Houston and Jacksonville game last week. That was a hard fought game for a Jacksonville team that has not looked good, and with Mac Jones. It's just division games, you never know how it is. So trusting someone who is a little inconsistent, I'm not going that way.
I must interject, and I hear you. I hear your point. Was it not? Okay, we didn't have a show because of Thanksgiving. The last show that we had was a divisional matchup against a much better defense in the Texans. And was he or was he not your start of the week?
He was, because but that's different. That's different. Look at Mac Jones cooked against Houston, man. That's what I'm telling you, is because my point was Houston is not good against the quarterback. Mac Jones cooked when he came in against Mac Jones cooked against Houston. Just think about that. That's the difference. Yes,
JC coming
it
in
is
with
weird.
a comment. I couldn't agree more. It is weird to say that in any capacity, Mason. I'm really happy that Lee remembered that, though. That is a very good point. Houston, much better defense. But you said the perfect matchup, and that's why I brought up the Jags. On the season, they are 32nd against quarterback, 29th against running back, 31st against wide receiver, and 28th against tight end. Things are going to work. If they're going to work for Will Levis and the tight ends ever, it's going to be now.
I just don't really want to touch a game where Mac Jones and Will Levis are the two starting quarterbacks. I don't want to watch that game. I don't want any part of it. Just leave it in the corner.
I would have preferred for Will Levis.
Good.
I would have preferred for Will Levis to have Lawrence starting opposite of him, so it's potential for some points to be put up against the Titans. With Mac Jones starting now, a little bit more questionable, in my opinion, that it could end up being a Tony Pollard game.
Yeah, I was just saying that Levis has been a top 20 quarterback at least the last 4 weeks. And a lot of it was garbage time after they were just blown out of the water early by the Washington Commanders. But the points don't count the same. And obviously that's very unlikely to happen against the Jaguars. But, I mean, the connection with Westbrook Akine appears to be there. Right. I mean, he's been really hot the last few weeks. Got Calvin Ridley on the other side. You're still figuring out.
Oh, there's your headphones. Lee, tell me you heard that.
I didn't.
Oh, it sounded like Mason ripped. Like ripped them cheeks.
No, dude, I was burping. That was my bad. I tried to move my mic, but
didn't hit that mute button quick enough.
No.
I do think the Titans are more than likely. I think Levis has probably shown enough to be the starter next year, but that's the only thing they have the rest of the season. You've got to really open it up and see what you have in Will Levis, and I do think this is the game where he could really win the job next year if he comes out and really balls out.
And he's been decent the last 3 games. Yeah. He's had, I mean, even the game before that, he did well against the Chargers, but over the last 3 games, averaged 260 plus yards, 30.6 pass attempts per game, and has put up 16, 16, and 15 points roughly over the last 3 weeks. And that's 4-point per passing touchdown leagues. He's 5-2 for his touchdown to interception ratio over that time. It's been solid, and he did that against Minnesota, Houston, and Washington. Much better defenses than Jacksonville. So I like it this week for Will Levis. I say if you're desperate, fire him up. But
I just want to jump in real quick. Just up or down. That's what I want the answers. Has Will Levis dynasty value this season? Up or down? From the start of the season. Up.
Up.
Yeah.
Especially in the last 2 weeks.
A lot of people.
I think a lot of people don't.
By like week 3,
I don't think it's the consensus kind of thing yet, though. I think there's still a lot of people who are viewing his value as the preseason value.
Will Levis or Bryce Young? Dynasty.
I don't know, dude. Bryce is starting to cook now.
Right now. Like, I like Bryce Young pre-draft, not for like fancy, but just as like a decent NFL quarterback, like that 16 to 20 range of like ranking each year. And I don't know. I thought that he had great anticipation in college, and it was nowhere to be seen at the NFL. But maybe it's fine, like the speed's starting to catch up for him.
I think for me, it's what kind of quarterback. Like, I think they're very interchangeable value. If you traded them straight up, I would be like, okay, right now. I think Will Levis definitely is if you're looking for a guy that's going to have more upside in your future, a little more risky play. Bryce Young, if this is if they're both their careers work out. Bryce Young is going to be that more floor safe guy. I think going forward, if he does really continue to develop into an NFL quarterback.
It'll be interesting too to see who ends up with the worst record. Right now, they're tied at 3-9. I think if Bryce Young gets another weapon, that could help a ton. Yo, how about that Adam Thielen catch real quick?
Oh yeah, the one
Dude,
that
that was
didn't get called.
yeah, the catch that wasn't a catch, but it was
Okay,
filthy.
yeah.
All right,
Old
Jets.
man Thielen, I'll
Oh man,
never doubt him
go get
again.
it done. I thought that as soon as he got done with the 4 weeks, he'd come off the IR, and I said that week that he was worth a waiver wire ad. I have an IR slot, so he's been sitting there for me, and that has done well in a few leagues. But I'm sorry to anybody who didn't have an IR spot, and I suggested you got Adam Thielen 3 weeks before he came off IR. My bad. Next game up, Jets at Dolphins. Dolphins by 6. Over-unders 44.5. Let's see here. No disagreements for the most part on this. We all have Rodgers as a sit, Conklin as a sit, Braylon Allen as a sit, unless Brees Hall misses, but he looks good to go. Brees Hall, Devontae Adams, and Garrett Wilson's are all starts or flex spots. Been a little bit disappointing for Garrett Wilson after a hot start when Adams got there, but he's still worth starting. And then Tua, Devon Achane, Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, all start or flex worthy. I think Jalen Waddle is the one that deserves the most question. What do you guys think? We all have him as at least flex, but do you think that what's the risk of starting him this week going into your fantasy playoffs?
If you need an upside pick, I think he's the way to go. He's a total boomer bust player. If you start him and he gives you 6 points in a PPR league, don't be upset because that's your risk. But he could also get you like 20, 25 points, maybe even more. I mean, we know his ceiling is pretty high, but realistically 20, 25, or he could give you 6.
We could give you one.
I mean, that is true.
He could have one catch for 2 yards.
Yeah, one game of 25 points, 24.9, and then 24.4, and he's got one game of 1.6. So it truly could go either way. It's been a terrible year for him.
It's been a terrible 2 years for him. I mean, last year was more blame for injury. I mean, this year Tua injury kind of, but now it's just like.
And
I don't know.
Seems like he was at least a little bit hobbled heading into the season. But yeah, probably the most surprised start for all of us. If you told us at the beginning of the year that we were all like, yes, 3 locks for Jonnu Smith, put him in your lineup going into your championship or your fantasy playoffs, I would have been like, bullshit, let's get out of here. Miami rarely used the tight end position before this year. So wild, but it's happening. Jonnu's in the lineup. And unless
my
you guys have
favorite roster of all my teams this season is it's a 2 flex league in the tight end. I have Jonnu Smith at the tight end position, George Kittle and Trey McBride at the flex. Like Jonnu Smith is in at the tight end position, not those 2 guys. Oh yeah, it's a tight end premium, but I'm running those dudes. I love it. It's the coolest team I've ever had. Like
and on top of it, nobody else probably has like that great of a tight end playing against you because you got I wonder where they are right now in the rankings, like on the season. Mason, look
Kittle,
obviously tight ends are.
Obviously, Kittle last week was pretty bad, but
he was 1 before last week. I don't know if he dropped after that. McBride's 2 or 3. Just on.
Yeah, I mean, I know I have 3. I might have 3 of the top 5.
All right, so we have the next game up as the Falcons at the Vikings. Minnesota's favored by 6. Over/unders 45.5. After
this league, Jonnu Smith is 5, Kittle is 3, McBride is 2.
That's sick. That's sick. You're rarely facing a good tight end. All right, so Next game up, we were talking Vikings and or Falcons at Minnesota. Minnesota by 6. Kirk Cousins coming off of a 4 interception game, heading back to his former team. Do you guys think that he has any Jerry Judy in him, or is he just gonna completely bust, keep this streak going of shit games?
I think he has a better game this week. I mean, you can't get much worse. There's a little bit of a revenge aspect, but more than that, uh, the Vikings are a pass funnel. Um, that's how you're going to have to beat them. And I think Darnell Mooney, I know I didn't get that down on the list. You both have him as sits. He's a flex guy for me, especially with all these bye weeks. I think, obviously, when your quarterback has that bad a game, you're going to have a bad game. He's came back to earth a bit from where he was. But, yeah, I think him and London could both have really good games. And I do look for Atlanta to score some points here. I don't know if it'll be enough, but I think they have a much better game, especially Kirk Cousins and receivers.
Yeah, this game could just be like so. It could be great for the quarterbacks and wide receivers. Both teams pass funnels. Falcons 26th against quarterback, Vikings 21st. Falcons 27th against wide receiver, Vikings 32nd. This could be great for the quarterbacks and wide receivers in this one. It's just really hard to trust Kirk Cousins right now. He hasn't looked good. He hasn't looked like he believes in his decision making in the games. 0 touchdowns over the last 3 weeks, 6 interceptions during that time. Hasn't broken 10 points in a 4 point per touchdown league.
Yeah, I mean, he will probably have a better week than last week, but I do think this kind of game will be kind of the same similar style of game as last week. I think it's going to be a very gritty game. Minnesota's offense, I mean, they came back against the Cardinals. Obviously, that was a good effort by them. I still think they have not looked the same the past couple weeks, past 3-4 weeks now. Atlanta is really going to be fighting for something here. I mean, they're really trying to fight for that. The division's wide open. I think it's just going to be a tough game with, a lot of punting and then big plays here and there. It's a risky start for Kirk, but him going back to Minnesota gives me a little hope, but I'm avoiding him.
All right, so Bijan, we all have a start, obviously. Algier sit, London start, especially with those numbers we just heard about the Vikings. Then we just talked about Mooney, Kyle Pitts. We are all sitting though. He's hurt us enough. As the Vikings side of the ball, Sam Darnold, Aaron Jones, Justin Jefferson, all starts for sure, as well as TJ Hawkinson. Jordan Addison, we all have a start or flex. He can be a little bit boomer bust, hits on the big plays and the touchdowns. But I feel like the upside in this matchup is definitely worth it. Seems like we're all basically on the same page for that one.
I got a question for you guys.
Yeah.
Just in regards to the Vikings and looking forward. We know Darnold's a 1-year deal. He's played well enough. He's probably going to get a pretty decent contract. Doesn't seem likely that'll be in Minnesota. It's very possible that they start next season with Daniel Jones and J.J. McCarthy. You can have him pretty cheap, and there's no controversy when you bring in J.J. Where do you see Sam Darnold playing next season?
Cleveland.
Oh my God! Please don't do that to us. It'd be so sad. No, I think there's a higher shot that Minnesota does bring him back, but if they don't, I don't think that Sam Darnold's getting another. I think O'Connell's done a great job of coaching him up, getting him into a scheme where he can make quick, confident throws. And on top of it, he has 2 great wide receivers, one incredible wide receiver on the team, and one above average second-year wide receiver coming into his own. TJ Hawkinson's back. Aaron Jones can catch the ball. It's just a good situation for him. And then Christian Darrisaw, to anchor that left side. Darnold's going to see less ghosts. So, I just think that this worked really well for him. I don't know if he starts anywhere else if he leaves.
I disagree because there's just so many bad situations. I think he is a starter. And I think the money he's going to command really negates your advantage of having a quarterback on a rookie deal. And I get that there was a setback, but I don't think they're going to be able to pony up, especially with some of the other guys they've had to pay. I've got an interesting one that won't happen, and I've got what probably will happen. The Jets are going to be in the quarterback market very likely.
No way he goes, dude.
No.
There's no way.
won't
The way
happen.
that went, there's no way that he would, if he has any pride of self-pride, he will not go there.
That would be hilarious. I agree. It's very, very, very unlikely. I think the Raiders as a bridge is a very likely spot. They're probably going to draft a quarterback, and I could see him being in the same situation he was this year, but I could see him going to the Raiders.
I feel like a lot of teams tend to make, after a while of going one way, like the Raiders keep on bringing in veteran quarterbacks. And then after a while of like the Colts doing the same thing, they're like, okay, anything that's not what we've been doing. And I feel like the Raiders are on that path. But I do think that would be a decent fit. I could see him working well with a guy like Jacoby Myers, and Brock Bowers, couple of easy targets at the intermediate range. They would need to bring in like an actual field stretcher. If I had to actually put Darnold on a team, oh man, that is really tough. There's not a lot of teams that need just a game manager, but if the Steelers end up moving on from Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, I could see Darnold going to a team like that where they know they just need the bare minimum to make it work.
Yeah.
Muted. Mason, you're muted.
My bad. But I agree. We start Jameis Winston no matter what the critics think. God
For any of you
will,
audio listeners, we just
God
threw that
will
on the
deliver
screen.
us. God will deliver us from these pick
I mean,
sixes.
I love that game was incredible. Also hurt me in the worst ways. Like even when the game was out of reach on that last drive, it's like you get us to the 4-yard line and then you put it right in the breadbasket of the defender. Could at least let me cover the spread, Cleveland. That'd be great.
I
All right,
love
so
Jameis.
Vikings, we covered Jordan
Well, hold up.
Addison.
I want to say my Darnold thing though. I think it really depends what they do in playoffs. They're obviously going to make playoffs at this point. If they're first round exits, they go with JJ McCarthy. They make it to the NFC Championship, which is very plausible. I mean, there's Eagles and Lions. Those are the biggest two opponents. They could beat one of them and slip their way there. If they do, it becomes a little more confusing. But if they're first round exits, he could go. Cleveland, dude. I'm telling you, Cleveland.
It's not happening. We won't do it. We finally have a first round pick. We have a low draft spot. I think we've pulled the trigger after not having a first round for 3 years.
The Giants would be one other spot if they don't get their quarterback. I know he probably doesn't want to go back to
That'd
New
be
York
such a
immediately.
Giants move. That's going to happen. They'll replace Daniel Jones with a guy that's like fairly enough similar to him. Yeah, I'm a Browns fan, and the Giants are so poorly run. Let's get on to the next one, though. We got a lot of games to cover still. The Saints at Giants, next one appropriate. We have Saints favored by 5 points. Over under is 40.5 points. Got Derek Carr as a sit, Alvin Kamara as a start. The rest of them are sits. I would just say that Juwan Johnson could be a sneaky stream if you're desperate. I think now that Taysom Hill is gone, there's going to be less tight end snaps going around and mainly Juwan Johnson. And obviously we know no Chris Olave, no Rashid Shaheed. So there's not a lot of passing options. I think Alvin Kamara is probably going to have a 12 reception game, and Juwan Johnson might get like 7 for 50 yards or something like that. No disagreements. Giants on the other side of the ball.
Hold up.
You got something?
Start MVS. No, you are that he's saying that from a Saints fan. No,
it could happen. Yeah, I don't know. It's like it's not impossible.
Giants secondary is pretty rough.
What'd you say?
So the Giants secondary is pretty rough. You'd be good
But, I
for a
mean,
big one.
oh, you know what? You're right. Yeah, they're giving they're 7th against wide receivers, 2nd against tight ends, 6th against quarterbacks. Yeah, I didn't even I wrote all of that down and I didn't even process that. So it looks like it Alvin Kamara week because they are 28th against running backs. Could be a lot of game script over the course of the season, but I was just looking it up. Tommy DeVito listed limited on Wednesday with a forearm injury. Still not quite sure who is going to be. Drew Lock to start once more in Week 14. I think he did deserve it, even though he had an egregious pick six. He looked overall more competent than their other starters. Do you guys agree with that?
He just had no
Yeah,
time. The O-line played so bad.
I mean, he still played bad, but his competition is Daniel Jones and
Well,
Tommy DeVito.
no, that's what I
This
said.
guy,
The O-line played so bad. I mean,
oh,
they
the
didn't really
O-line.
they didn't give him a chance.
Yeah. I mean, it he's the most competent of it. He can push the ball downfield. I would like to see Malik Neighbors open up the part of his game we saw him succeed at LSU. Get him moving downfield. He's great anywhere. Just get him in space. But like, let Drew Lock uncork a couple of them if the O line can hold up. Throw a running back there for extra protection. I guess they don't have a great blocking running back in Tracy and Singletary. Speaking of Tracy's start for all of us. Are you guys starting anybody else other than Malik Neighbors?
Wando's a flex just because, I think he's just in PPR, not just in PPR, but
Right.
because he's probably gonna get at least 5 catches, hopefully it's for at least 50, 60 yards at least.
So
Yeah.
asking for a friend, Tyrone Tracy or Isaac Garindo against the Bears. Who would you start?
Garindo
Ooh.
because it's the Niners. We're gonna run the ball, dude. Whether or not all it takes is 1 or 2 runs from him, just because he's gonna get enough volume. There's nobody else, dude. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I do have to lean that way too. It's just too I really kind of want to I kind of want to go with Tracy. Saints are 30th against running back right now. Have a bad defense in comparison to past years. No better than 18th in any at versus any position. Tracy's been doing it. We know he can catch the ball. We know he's needed, but it's just like Shanahan is copied all around the league for a reason. Yeah, he runs a good scheme. They are still a good team overall, even though they are not playing well this year. So you
it's
can
sloppy
that over the
football.
Giants, dysfunctional organization. I feel like. How about you, Lee?
It honestly, it's just Niners are playing sloppy football. I mean, that's really what it is. But the system is still always going to be built around the run as long as Shanahan's the coach, no matter who's there. Garindo also has looked good in some of the limited time he's got. He's busted out for a couple runs. I mean, I can't think of what game it was. I think it might have been against
Seattle or
Seattle.
Dallas?
He had
Yeah.
that breakout run, and he slid down. It was a total easy 50, 60-yard touchdown. That was all him just breaking out with his speed.
You
I
probably
haven't really
gained
seen a
respect
true
for going
speedster
down.
we haven't seen a true speedster of his style in Shanahan's offense in a while since Mostert. So let's see how that goes.
Yeah, I think I'm leaning Garindo. It's a little scary with a season on the line, but Tracy has kind of worked his way out of the doghouse. They've been working in Singletary a little bit more, and that does worry me as well. So yeah, I'm leaning Garindo just from volume.
Yeah. And his 2 games where he had 10 plus touches, he had 10 for 99 on the ground against Seattle, 14 for 85, and a touchdown against Dallas with another 3 catches for 17. He can definitely get it done. And yeah, I'd say Elijah Mitchell had similar speed, but Garendo's 21 pounds heavier and he's faster. So this is going to be fun if they open up a hole. Next game is going to be the biggest line of the week. Carolina at Philly. Philly sitting at a 12-point favorite. Over unders 45.5 points. I don't know about you guys. I know Carolina's been playing better, but I feel like Saquon might have the 3 TD game. Panthers are dead last against running back in fantasy. I don't know. What do you guys think? Does Saquon, are you putting down a 2 touchdown bet for Saquon this week?
Yes, because I want him to do that. But am I realistically thinking it's going to happen? I don't know, dude. Carolina's been tough. Last time I've listened to the podcast once since then because, it's been a while. I listened to it, and last time I was talking about Carolina. I hope they beat Kansas City. And Lee said, "Oh, you're high or something, blah, blah, blah." You guys were making fun of me.
We
And guess
were
what?
definitely-
Carolina made
They're
that
close.
game. That was a very close game. That was a very good game. Carolina's no
Did
joke
they win?
anymore.
Did they beat
No.
Kansas City?
No, but dude, they lost by 3. I mean, against Kansas City, that's a good game against one of the best teams in the NFL for a very poor performing team.
Are
I
they?
think
It's the thing is though,
No, okay.
it's not about how well the Panthers played. It's about the Chiefs always playing up or down to their opponent's level. Like I think they've had like 2 games where they won by more than 1 score all season.
Okay, all right, but that's fine. I think okay, you're right.
I mean,
I
it's a
do
good
think
call then,
I,
you know.
okay,
'Cause
I do
kind of
I
it.
do think Eagles will beat them more than the Chiefs beat the Panthers, but Panthers are honestly we need to really start respecting them as a team and whole a lot more. I mean, since Bryce Young's really came back, they've looked like a respectable football team. They not great, but respectable.
So yeah, they have 2 games where they won by more than 1. One of them was against the 49ers, 28-18, and the other was against the Saints.
Holy
What'd
crap.
you say, Lee? What
You
did you
right?
say, Lee?
I just said want, and then Mason had a mini stroke over there or something. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I was
No,
like,
it's
I don't
just
know. I feel like I missed something,
no,
but I
it's
guess I
just
didn't.
funny because me and one of my best friends, we hate the Chiefs with all our heart, and he's a Saints fan and I'm a Niners fan. So I was just thinking about how funny that is that like
Well,
we're
the
the
Chiefs
only
are
teams.
the Chiefs are not going back to the Super Bowl this year.
I
I
like
think
that
Bills
comment that
actually
came
will
in.
be.
Bucky Irvin's a dog. I love how hard he runs for how little he is. But yeah, so let's go. We won't talk about that one yet. But yeah, so on the Panther side of the ball, Bryce Young. I love Mason, your comment here. Can't say it quite yet on the pod. Come for after hours for that. But basically, I have him as a sit. Lee, what you didn't put one here. What do you got here? Bryce Young
Say it
at
again. You
Philly.
broke up a little bit. Bryce Young?
Bryce Young at Philly. Who do you got here?
Yeah, I'd start Will Levis over him.
I would do.
I'd have to be pretty desperate to start Bryce Young against Philly. Their defense has been really good.
I agree with that. Where do you sit on that, Mason? Will Levis or Bryce Young?
Well, I really wish I could say it, but I'm
I
gonna
know,
say
right?
yeah. Dude,
Honestly,
it would be
Say it.
like
I would say
this.
just do it.
All right, fuck it, we ball. Bryce Young, let's go.
That's what he's got here. I loved it. As soon as I saw that in the comments, I was like, "Fuck it, we ball." Okay, Mason, like get after it. Let's see if you actually do you have him anywhere.
Oh yeah, dude, I got Bryce Young in like 3 leagues. One
So
of
what?
them,
Am I in on any of those leagues? Because I need to fact check
no,
this shit.
no, one of them though, I have Purdy, Mahomes, and I have some other good quarterback in that
That's
league.
fair enough.
Yeah,
You
and
better
so
start.
yeah, that one he's not starting, but another one I am starting him. It's a 16-man league, super flex. So yes, I'm starting Bryce Young.
All right, and then I mean, similar tone. I have Chuba as the sit. Philly. We didn't even talk about that. Philly's second against quarterback, fourth against running back, first against wide receiver, and ninth against tight end. They fully turned it around. They had so much talent, mainly from Georgia's defense, and they sucked last year. And then they bring in Cooper DeJean, and why am I blanking on his name? He's so freaking good.
Quinyon Mitchell.
Yeah.
Thank you, Quinyon Mitchell, and completely flipped this offense or this defense around. So top 10 in against every position. I got Chuba Hubbard as a sit. Mason, you have him as a flex. Lee, I didn't see your answer on this one. What do you got?
I think I think Brooks is going to continue to eat into that workload. He looked pretty good in limited workload. Yeah, I'm sitting him unless I'm really desperate because of bye weeks. I mean, there's a caveat that um, there's a lot of bye weeks this week. So, if you have to play him, you can do it and hope he falls into the end zone. But yeah, the clock's
Right.
running out on old Chuba.
Exactly. Yeah, Brooks, 8% of snaps in his first game, 21% last week, went from 2 carries to 6 carries, added another 3 receptions compared to 0 in that first week. I think the pass catching role is where Chuba's gonna lose out, and Chuba really needed all of it. So Adam Thielen, after balling out last week, I do have him listed as a start, mainly because look at that spread, 12 points. They're going to be chasing a long time. So Adam Thielen, even if he, isn't going to have the same game he had last week, I think he's going to be good for like 10 to 12 targets, 6 to 8 catches, and like 80 yards or so.
I'd be scared to start him. Again, the secondary's played really well if you're in a desperate situation, but I wouldn't want to start him. And just to add to what Mason said earlier, so I don't think the Panthers are going to beat the Eagles, but they're going to cover the 12. Give me the Panthers.
Cover 12 for sure.
Oh, dude, I might have teased the Panthers on that for sure. Minus 18, that seems safe. Until AJ Brown ends up with like 3 touchdowns and like 400 yards because Carolina.
All right, and then we have rest of the Panthers as a sit. We have every Eagle as a start. Jalen Hurts,
Besides
Saquon
Jahan
Barkley,
Dotson.
AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, and Dallas Goedert. If he starts, keeps on getting those questionable tags. Don't know if he's going to make it, but yeah, knee non-participant on Wednesday. The only bad part about a Wednesday podcast is we do not have the best injury reports. Wednesday's classic veteran rest day, so 28-year-old tight end might just be getting a rest day. Cleveland at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, 6.5-point favorites. Over under is 43.5 points. Are you gonna say this one too, Mason? I'll let you lead it off. You take it where you want to.
I'll put up a comment from someone. Start Jameis Winston. I don't care what the critics think, and I agree because Jameis Winston fucks, man. This dude is like this dude is just like if you want someone to just cheer for, put him in your damn lineup because how can you not cheer for Jameis Winston when he has a good week? Oh my God! Like last week, the media coverage, everything from it, I love it. You gotta love Jameis. Put him in the game. Always, just start Jameis. It's such a fun experience to sit there and watch Winston play football.
I've changed my mind. I had him as a start. I thought it over a little bit. The game he had against the Steelers last time wasn't that great. Obviously, it was a very messy snow game, and he led an incredible drive to win the game. The Steelers are going to punish him in this game. They're going to punish the Browns as a whole.
Yeah, he's going to have it too, unfortunately.
I'd start Will Levis over Winston. I'm using him as my barometer, and I would start Levis over Jameis this week.
Yeah, I would still also start Levis. I mean, like, it hurts me to say. I want us to beat the Steelers. I would love to see, even if it's another game for Winston last week, like he had against the Steelers, just come out with the dub. I don't think it's going to work in our favor this week. Right now, we're playing against the first best team against quarterbacks. That's tough. Fourth against wide receivers. I love Jerry Jeudy, and that game was insane. But there had to have been something wrong with the Broncos scheme or something because that just doesn't happen. Broncos are, without the numbers in front of me, at least a top 3 defense against quarterbacks and wide receivers. Like they shut down the passing game, and Jerry Jeudy popping off like that. I don't know. It was just written in the stars. So loved watching it happen. But I do think that it's going to come to an end here. I don't think the offense keeps it going against the Steelers. I have Jameis as a sit. Nick Chubb's a sit, basically. You can throw him in and hope for a touchdown. Jerome Ford, Cedric Tillman, all sits. I do got Jeudy Moore and Njoku as starts.
Yeah, I
What
have
you
more
guys?
as a flex. I mean, I think there's just a lot more safer options, but there's some upside with more just because Winston is the quarterback, and Steelers might have three or four interceptions against him this week, but Winston's probably still going to put up 250 yards. So at least, so there's still some upside for more.
I'm not starting Elijah Moore. I know he's had some pretty decent games. Again, I think this is going to be a very punishing game. Um, I, I don't know if the Browns scored more than 14.
In full PPR, he's had 16 or more points in 3 of the last 5. He has gone every other, so if you believe in that kind of pattern, this is the bad game in the every other. So don't take this game if that is your style. But you got Russell Wilson as a start, Najee Harris. I got Jalen Warren listed as a start, but I I just watched so many games. He bounces off Browns tackles like a pinball. That guy just I don't know what it is, but we have such a hard time bringing him down. And you kind of saw that style of runner last week. Jalen McLaughlin had a lot of success. Javante Williams less success. Najee's more of the Javante in this offense, where Jalen Warren's the Jaleel McLaughlin. Fast, tiny, fast guys fuck us up for some reason. So I do think Jalen Warren's startable or flexible at the bare minimum, and then George Pickens. But I got Calvin Austin and Pat Fryermuth as sits. What do y'all have?
Pat Fryermuth is the sit for sure. I mean, I'm actually starting him this week because my tight end's on bye. So, but I'm saying sit if there's a lot of better options. Russell Wilson, let's let him cook this week. Honestly, like I mean, last week he looks good and stuff. Van Jefferson's out, or one of the Steelers receivers is out, right? Or am I wrong about that?
I have not kept up with any Van Jefferson news.
Well, hey, but I feel
He's
like
still in the league.
there's one of hey, it makes a difference whether if he's not getting that reception or two, it's going to spread to someone else. It's either him or Austin. I don't know. I don't really pay attention to the Steelers. I don't have much Steelers in honestly any league besides Najee, so I don't really pay attention to them.
Great advice coming from Mason Beck.
Yeah. I'd start Jalen Warren. I'd agree with you on Jalen Warren being the starter.
Yeah.
Again, it's the end with bye weeks, and I think he'll catch enough out of the backfield. And I like it. I like Jalen Warren anytime touchdown this week.
Oh, he's only had 1 touchdown on the season. I believe
He's
it was
due.
against us.
He's due.
I'm looking it up right now. Yeah, he's got 1 touchdown on the season.
Lee,
And
you
yeah, it was
forgot the
against
Steelers are just going to kick 6 field goals and win. So
it could happen. Let's see. We got the Raiders against Tampa Bay up next. Tampa Bay 6.5-point favorites. Over under at 46.5. Aiden O'Connell had a decent game last week. Not starting him though. Even in a favorable matchup, the Bucks are 22nd against. I'm sorry, Bucks are 31st against quarterbacks. Not starting Aiden O'Connell. I just can't bring myself to do it. Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers are serviceable for sure. I mean, Brock Bowers is incredible for a tight end, especially in fantasy. But like for a real offense moving the ball just through those 2 guys with no run game, I just don't trust him to get it done. You guys were on the same page, right?
yeah, don't use recency bias to be like, oh, I need to start AOC. Starting him really at any point for the rest of the season, it's a dart throw.
Yeah. Yeah. So we basically have everybody other than Jacoby and Brock Bowers as sits. Both of those guys are getting enough target.
Hey,
Oh,
Lee has Trey Tucker as a start, and I have
wait
him as a
1 minute.
flex.
Hold up, wait a minute. Lee, go ahead and cook, sir.
Again, thin week. I just have that feeling. Tampa is not good against wide receivers. He had 1 catch for 58 yards last week against a very good Kansas City defense. The week before, he was 7 of 8 for 82. He's a young guy. Again, to me, you get to this point in the season, all due respect to Jacoby Myers, he's not your wide receiver one ever. And how much of a future? I mean, a few more years maybe as your 2 or 3. But to me, obviously, Bowers is your number 1 target getter. Tucker should be the number 2 target getter this week. They should really feed him the ball over these next 5 games and see what you have. He has shown flashes this season. And I think his better games have been with O'Connell for the most part. A lot of inconsistency. It's a huge risk. But if you're looking for a guy to throw in, I'd put Trey Tucker in over Adam Thielen. There's a few other receivers, but I know you'd like Adam Thielen. If you want to put it on the board,
I'll definitely put that on the board.
half point.
Yeah. You have the chance for that one catch to pop, and that could definitely happen. But I'll take my odds with the volume. Is the name.
Yeah, I like Trey Tucker as kind of a desperation flex. There's a lot of upside. I mean, Lee kind of touched a lot of what I was kind of thinking. You know, I'm more on the flex part than the start. I don't know. Like Lee said, he had that gut feeling. When I was looking at it, I had a weird gut feeling about Trey Tucker too this week for some reason. I don't know. I had that gut feeling too. It could just be, you know, some random thought. But I do want to say I think Trey Tucker is a very good dynasty buy low candidate going forward. I've been in a couple leagues where people have dropped him in dynasty, and I'm just like, what? I think like he's an interesting people where some people they do not value him at where he should be.
Right. I mean, Raiders next season are lined up to be a top draft pick at the bare minimum, and we know
And they're
that
gonna draft Shador.
and yeah, they're bare minimum they are going quarterback. So that means that at most Trey Tucker has free agents and a second round quarter or wide receiver to compete with. Jacoby Myers, if I am correct, is heading into the last year of his contract. Could be an easy, sell. I don't think they're going to turn it around in a year. So come trade deadline next year, Jacoby Myers could be that trade piece that gets sent to a competing team. And it could be Trey Tucker and not much else. So I do like him in Dynasty. But I don't think that he has proved enough this year for me to even put him up against a poor secondary like the Buccaneers, 25th against wide receiver. I just can't imagine throwing him in there banking on trying to get into the playoffs right now. All right, so that covers the Raiders. Buccaneers up next. We got Baker Mayfield, Bucky Irving, Mike Evans, K. Dotton as all for sure starts. I have Rashad White as a flex and Mason, basically same thing, desperation start. How are you feeling about Rashad White right now, Lee?
You should have sold him when you had the chance in Dynasty, because his value has fallen greatly. It's really looking for a touchdown. Bucky Irvin's taken so much of the volume away and will continue to do so. I mean, the eye test says he is a better NFL running back. He's much more efficient. So flex at best. But again, with injuries and buys, you may be in a situation where you do have to play him. There's a lot of those 20 to 30 range running backs I'd rather play. But I mean, Chuba, I would start over Rashad White this week. I would definitely start Jalen Warren over him. I mean, there's those guys in that range I would start over.
Interesting. I would probably go Rashad White over both of the guys we mentioned. Right now, Raiders 25th against running back. Rashad last week, even, like the headline, even on Sleeper right now, works in complementary role. Played 53% of the snaps compared to Bucky Irving's 54. Obviously, Bucky Irving had huge workload that day, going for 28 carries or 28 touches. Rashad White still had 12. I feel like that's going to be about what Chuba gets on the day. And I think that this is a much easier matchup for Rashad White. The only downside is I don't think the Raiders are going to have to pass the ball a ton, and that's really where Rashad White sees himself worked in more, is when he's worked in the passing game. So
I think Bucky's kind of evolved himself into this role where he's proven, give him the workload that he's gonna produce. Rashad White is in non PPR leagues, he's a sit in my opinion by all means. And PPR, it's interesting because it is all receiving work that you're hoping for. So it's all about the matchup. You're looking at necessarily who they are playing. And I think against the Raiders, they might dominate. They had a very close game against the Panthers last week. I think that the Bucks could just absolutely blow them out, and it's going to just be Bucky Irving taking a majority of the carries, and Rashad White maybe he's just a change of pace guy, or to take a little steam off, or take a little workload away from Bucky, just to not hurt him.
Yeah, no, I feel you. I think that, I mean, Bucky Irving's been playing through injury all season long. I was surprised to see this big of a workload after there's no other game where he's had more than 18 touches. He goes for 28 this game. But I agree. He is worth it. Thank you to everybody. We're a little over on the time, but thank you guys for listening in on 99.1. Sorry for Mason's terrible language today. I don't know what got into him. I definitely didn't encourage that at
Fuck 'em.
all. Balkan we ball. So we're moving on to the next one here. We have Seattle at Arizona. Seattle right now Arizona's favored by 2.5 points. Over unders 44.5 points. I would take the over on that personally. And Mason, I know that you had a player in this one that you really wanted to talk about. Go for it.
We are talking about Seattle and Arizona. I'm going to say sit Kyler Murray. The last 2 weeks, he has not been producing very much. In fantasy, it's been a drop back. This is kind of the thing we see as a trend towards the end of the year, that Kyler stops producing fantasy as much. Last time against Seattle, he struggled. I mean, they played Seattle 2 weeks ago. He did struggle. The big thing that Seattle did that really, held him back from fantasy production was running. They held him to 2 carries for 9 yards. That's big. That is what Kyler Murray's game is. I mean, he hasn't been throwing a ton of touchdowns this season. James Conner's getting, they're kind of producing a lot more touchdowns through the running game than they are throwing it in. If Seattle contains that running game, it is going to be another poor performance from Kyler Murray. He might get a decent amount of passing yards and such, but just the touchdowns, I don't think they're going to be there at all. He did have 285 passing yards. That is pretty solid, but 37 passing attempts. That was his second most of the season. That's not going to happen again.
I got him as a start, honestly. I can't sit.
It's hard to
Kyler
sit
Murray.
Murray. I get it, but
Right,
if you're going to sit him, this is my week to sit him.
I do get it. I mean, Seattle, 11.3 points and 4-point passing touchdowns. Last week against Minnesota, average game 16.2. Both of those games combined, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. I don't know. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't watch the Seattle Arizona game a couple weeks ago, like
It
inside
was
and out.
very
I don't know.
boring.
Right. I don't know if they like schemed something up specific where it limited him, or if he just didn't end up taking off that game. Like you said, he had 37 pass attempts, more than normal for him. So maybe it was just a game where he thought he could take advantage of the defense through the air. Seahawks, really hard defense to read where the points are going to go to. Quarterback, they're middle of the pack for everything. 17th against quarterback, 19th against running back, 18th wide receiver, and 23 against tight end. Like not a specific spot that you're targeting, but obviously everyone's in agreement here. We are going to be starting Marvin Harrison, Trey McBride, James Conner, Michael Wilson. We're sitting. I mean, that's that for the Cards.
Yeah, I mean, that there's not really a ton of argument. I will say this though, Trey Benson's looking good for Dynasty. He's breaking some nice runs.
Yeah, he was my RB2 in rookie drafts this year, so I'm a big fan.
The
I
2-year
think he was my
extension
RB1, but the before landing spot.
Yes, before landing spot RB1, but after being behind Connor, I do think I bumped Brooks up above him.
And then, like I said, 2-year extension for Connor. We know he's older, but still, that's just they've kicked that hurdle down the road a little bit for Benson.
Yeah. All right, boys, we got the Seahawks left to talk about. We got Geno Smith up first. I got him as a borderline quarterback one. I think that Geno's got the weapons around him, and when you go up against the middle of the pack defense, although the Cardinals have been better this year than expected defensively, but I think they're still overall middle of the pack. I don't think they have the secondary to cover all three of those wide receivers. And Geno Smith has had at least 30 passing attempts in the last 4 games, at least 21 or at least 20 completions over that time. Good yardage, just needs the touchdowns to come through. So if the touchdowns hit, I think he's fine. What do you guys think? Muted?
My bad. I'm looking at the last matchup against Arizona. I mean, just not his greatest fantasy performance. I'm not, super mad about starting him, but I think there's a lot of other better streaming options. There's a couple other quarterbacks I think that are available that I would, in most leagues, that I would start over him.
Yeah. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. So only one game with 20 plus points in the last 7. Not great. He had a little stretch at the beginning of the season, but it's been a while since he had that top end performance. Probably a safe start, but we're not looking for safe here. We need the guy that's going to give you that in for your fantasy playoffs.
So I would definitely start Kyler over him. I mean, that's a no-brainer.
Oh yeah,
I would too, and that's with me saying sit Kyler.
I would also
Will
start
Levis
Will
or
Levis.
Geno? You start him over Will Levis?
I would start Will Levis over Geno.
I
If
think
you
the
need more
matchup
upside, I
there.
would go Levis.
I agree. Will Levis's attempts per game has been going up recently too. So, so that does it for that game. Moving on, we got 4 games left here, boys. We got Buffalo at the Rams. Buffalo favored by 5. Over under is 48.5. I think this has some shootout potential. I think the Bills players are pretty obvious for the most part. We're starting Josh Allen. You're starting James Cook. We're starting, or at bare minimum, flexing Khalil Shakir. Everybody else is a sit for me, including Amari Cooper. I think there could be some arguments to be had there, though. Where do you guys sit on Amari Cooper versus the Rams this week?
I have him as a flex because, like you're saying, there's shootout potential. Stafford versus Josh Allen. That could just be an entire gunslinging match.
Right.
Cooper it's been a weird thing, since he's came to the Bills, obviously had to learn the playbook, dealing with that injury snow game last week. If he's 100% this week, this might be the first true opportunity we can see Cooper at his full readiness with the Bills.
Yeah.
So maybe there's some upside, and it's a good matchup, I think, to maybe do that. It's a risky play, but I think this could be the chance for him to really do it.
Lee?
I'd have to be pretty desperate to start him. I mean, there's just so much that they do on the ground, and just the entire outside of Shakir being that underneath guy, there's just been no consistency all year from the receiving core of Buffalo. He's going to have to catch a touchdown for him to really deliver for you.
Right. It's just been bad since he's gotten there. He had the touchdown the first week he was with the Bills, and then since then, just bad. Also, hasn't cracked 52% snap share, even after being with the team for about 4 or 5 weeks, 5, 6 weeks. So I don't know. I can't bring myself. Yeah.
Who do you guys think would be a better play? Because you guys don't like Cooper. If Keon Coleman plays, would you do him or Cooper? Because that might not pertain as much to fantasy, but maybe daily fantasy that kind of pertains to.
I'd rather start Coleman if they're both playing.
I'd start Cooper. I just think that even with the low snap percentage, I think that he's the red zone. I mean, Coleman's a red zone threat as well, but he's just not polished. Amari Cooper's at least polished. He can take advantage of things he's seen on the NFL field before. I don't think that Coleman has that nuance yet to his game. All right, so we covered the Bills for the most part, pretty obvious on their side. We got the Rams up next. Matthew Stafford, I have him as a sit. The Bills are really solid against quarterbacks. They are third against quarterbacks, ninth against wide receivers, fourth against tight ends, 31st against running backs. Mason, you got written as your answer. So where are you sitting at now?
I mean, because dude, it's Matthew Stafford. I mean, like I was saying, this could be a potential shootout game. Like the second you think, dude, it's Stafford. He's old, he's gonna just have a crappy game. It's like, oh, there he goes, throwing 300 yards and 3 touchdowns to
Right.
Puka and Cooper Cup. It's just he's your old Stafford is your definition of a streaming option.
Yeah.
No matter who he plays, there's always a potential for him to have a good game. But there's also potential for him to have a bad game, no matter who he plays.
Yeah, I think I probably would start him. Just again, not that harp on it, but you've got Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, C.J. Stroud, Bo Nix, Anthony Richardson. Probably, I mean, there were some
Did you
people
just
that brought him up.
acknowledge Bo Nix as like a serious starting option? Did I just
No,
hear
he
that?
said he's on
from you?
bye.
Oh,
That's
okay.
what I'm saying. I'm naming the bye guys, but yes,
Okay.
he would have been a starting option if he was playing. So that's just a lot of the guys. Two top 4 options in Jaden and Lamar. So you may have to again. This is the one I would say like I would start him over Will Levis. That's been my barometer the whole time. I'd have a tough decision if those were my 2 options this week. It'd be really tough.
I would also go Stafford.
Well, guess what? I'm starting both of them in one league, Lee.
All right, so Stafford we're all basically borderline quarterback 1, high end quarterback 2, back end quarterback 1. We're all starting Kyren. I would say, like, if I had a running back start of the week, it'd be Kyren Williams. I think he's going to blow up this game.
I don't know. I want to jump in the weird him not getting a single touch in the first quarter. Last week, I don't know if you noticed that Kyren didn't get a single touch in the first quarter.
I honestly didn't notice it. 15 for 104 and a touchdown. I didn't end up looking into like their first quarter or anything, but like the Saints, terrible secondary. Maybe I know like a lot of coaches like to do the first and or second drive. We're doing the script, running the script. Maybe it was just like, let's just throw the ball down their throat.
Well, Blake Corum was in.
They were giving it to Corum. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it wasn't just like, oh, they're not running the ball. They were giving it to Corum. It was
ended up
really
with
weird. Like, yeah, it was really weird. I was freaking out in a couple leagues.
He looked pretty good. As far as dynasty,
I don't think he would do bad in this offense. I think if he got the starting gig, RB like back end RB1. But Kyron's better, and I just don't think that he's gonna surpass him. But that's a little worrisome there. 8 for 42 was it? I just pulled it down, but it was an efficient
carry.
Yeah. All right, so Puka, Cooper Cup, we're both starting, obviously, or we're all starting, and then Demarcus Robinson and Colby Parkinson both sits. Demarcus Robinson is a prayer in a DFS lineup that he gets the touchdown. That's about that. So we got Mason's squad. Chicago's coming to San Fran this week. San Fran's favored by 4, over under 43.5. Caleb Williams, popular streaming option this week after coming off of back-to-back solid games in fantasy, adding some rushing upside. I see what you wrote in there, Mason. I do agree. So why don't we talk about it a little bit?
I'm gonna say he's a start if Nick Bosa is not playing.
Yeah.
If Nick Bosa is not playing.
Yes.
If you look at when Nick Bosa the last time he played, I'm an Iron fan. I've seen this. It was against Seattle. Geno Smith was terrible the first half. If you look at his I think he had like 60 yards or something like that. If you look at his stats from that week, his end production, it's not great. It's okay, but that all came in the second half for the most part. If you look at ever since then, the Niners defense collapsed. I mean, Josh Allen made us look silly. He wasn't passing the ball great, but I mean, the Niners defense is just lost without Bosa. I have discovered this season that everything runs around Bosa. If he's not there, Caleb Williams might have a good game. And I mean, Eberflus is gone. The team seems like they hated him. Is it Andrew Thomas? Is that the name of the OC who's now their interim coach? What's his
No.
name?
Honestly,
Thomas
no,
Brown.
no.
Thomas Brown. I knew it was
Oh,
something with Thomas.
Andrew
Thank
Thomas
you.
is left tackle. I know that.
Yeah. Yeah, Andrew Thomas, he was an NFL player. Yeah, I feel like that. But the team seems to really rally around him. I mean, it's looked better since when he started calling plays. Now that he's the head coach, maybe this team has something to rally behind against a Niners team that is on the brink of collapse.
Yeah, I mean, I have them as a sit because I think that they're going to be able to get to them. Chicago doesn't have a good offensive line. That's the one downside here. I think that the 49ers secondary has been questionable enough for the Bears wide receivers to take advantage of. 49ers are also 27th against the running back, so it could just be a DeAndre Swift day. I think they want to get him more involved than he's been the past few weeks. That's how they did it at the beginning of the season. But
There's a lot
that
of injury stuff though that I want to say it's like Travaris Ward. Last week was his first week back in like a month. He was dealing with personal issues. Dre Greenlaw might be back next week. That's a big addition. Bosa might be back. There's a lot of injury reports, and those are three stud guys you got to think about. Like those are three
100%.
guys who have been Pro Bowlers. If they're not there, if the difference between them being there and them playing is an entire different outcome. I think it's very
Especially if it's
important to
all
watch
three.
that. Yeah,
If it's all three in a row.
very different outcome.
It's
For
the
sure.
NFL. Everybody has injuries. Suck it up. Next man up.
Yeah, but no, I'm not blaming an excuse. My team sucks, dude. There's no excuse for it. I'm just saying, from like a statistic wise and everything, if Greenlaw, Bosa, and Travaris Ward are there, it's a much tougher matchup.
Yeah, no, that's a fact. I have Williams as a sit. I have Roshan, Odunze, Cole Kmet as a sit, but I have Swift, DJ Moore, and Keenan Allen as a start or flex. Keenan Allen's the flex. Everyone else is a start. DJ Moore finally had a giant target day. Only caught 8 of 16, but at least he's getting the targets. If they're trying to manufacture touches to him, I can trust them in this game. All right, everyone agrees. Brock Purdy, I have as a sit. Bears are 5th against quarterback in the season, 2nd against wide receivers. Mason, you got him as a start. Is this just a homer pick or?
I mean, I think, okay, there's probably some bias into it because I obviously want him to, like my title says, I want him to save the season. But I think there's a lot more to it. Brock Purdy is due for an extension next year.
Okay.
If the Niners can somehow make the playoffs this season, we lose one game, Brock Purdy could carry this team, do all this. Brock Purdy is playing for the difference of making $10 million more a year for the next 4 years of his career. Brock Purdy is playing for a contract right now. And that's what I'm more looking at. Because the last couple weeks, Brock Purdy's salary might have dropped $10 million. He's playing to earn that $10 million back. And that's what I'm more thinking.
Yeah, I mean,
I think he's already made his money.
I think so, but I don't know. The last couple of weeks, there's been some doubt because the whole organization I'm telling you, I've talked to multiple fans, everybody, what I've reported, Niners are very close to the brink of collapse, man. It's like, it's a very weird situation. It's a very weird situation.
It's rough out there in them quarterback streets, man. As somebody that started like 15 quarterbacks over the last 4 years, it's rough when you don't have a quarterback. And he's
I hear
not.
that.
Yeah, he's not ever going to be a top 5 guy. I don't see that. But he's a top 15 guy, and he can win when you put talent around him.
Oh yeah,
You gotta
Brock
pay
Purdy
him.
could be that guy that wins a Super Bowl or once, but is never a Hall of Famer. You know, like that's the type of guy he is.
Yeah.
If you guys needed to, let's say, purely both quarterbacks would be operating on San Fran, and it was just this year alone, trying to win a title, go for it all. Would you rather have Kirk Cousins or Brock Purdy?
This
Purdy.
year,
This year alone.
Brock
Purdy, 100%. But if you're talking prime Kirk Cousins, I'd take prime Kirko.
I mean, I'd rather have Sam Darnold there than Kirk Cousins at this point.
I was gonna almost
This year,
ask
yeah.
that, but they literally had him there last year.
Yeah.
They did have him.
Because I mean, like you like that Kirk Cousins. Oh my God, that mentality on the Niners would be wild.
I think I know all your answers, so I didn't go with this guy, but Jared Goff or Brock Purdy.
Yeah, man, those are like. Well, I love Jared. He's a Cali boy, so that's hard for me to say.
I'd go golf.
I'd go Goff too. Yeah, I would go.
He's
even
a
if you're looking
Goff
at
is a
DeAndre.
system quarterback, and system quarterbacks work the best with the Niners.
Right? Yeah, like Brock. That's Brock Purdy's biggest criticism, and that he's a system
dude,
quarterback. And he's only as
Aaron
good as the
Rodgers.
talent around him.
Dude, I mean,
He's another
no,
California. Aaron
I
Rodgers.
mean, not right now, but like, I mean, dude, Tom Brady is the GOAT. He's the
I
GOAT.
can't.
He's a
select Aaron
system
Rodgers over
quarterback,
anyone right
though. You know,
Sorry.
like it's a play style. It's not necessarily the system around them. You know, like when I say system quarterback, it's the play style. Like Brady was a system quarterback, the greatest quarterback ever. But you know, like he just ran a system. You know, like
I don't know
Right.
if you
just
can
the
say
way
that because of
dude,
the
I don't know. That's why I say the
They
way it
changed it.
worked. Just the way it worked. It was just always like he just
Like
they
the
ran a
scheme-
perfect system.
The scheme when Randy Moss was the top dog in New England was different than the scheme when Julian Edelman was.
Oh yeah,
You
but
know?
like they could adjust the system. That's why he's the GOAT, because he ran a system that could adjust every single
But
time.
if you can adjust any system, is he a system quarterback?
Well,
I don't know. It's
who was the
He's
OC?
that's why Brady's the GOAT, man. You can't
Yeah, right.
you
Damn
can't like
good.
he's just Brady, dude. You're like, oh, they're a run heavy team, and then it's like, oh shit, Brady just threw 400 yards.
Right. All right. So, biggest question of the week, really. We kind of buried the lead here. Isaac Arendo taking over, starting, going to get the RB1 workload. We all have him as a start, though. Yeah. It's too much work to not put him in Shanahan offense.
Yeah, I mean, I already said my point earlier.
Word.
Where,
Yeah. So
where
we're
would
all
you rank
starting
him
him.
at running back this week?
I have Juwan Jennings listed as a start, but I do think that expectations need to be a little bit limited. He's going to probably get the Juwan Johnson treatment since they move Debo around all the time in the offense. I think, did I say Juwan Johnson?
You
Yeah,
were talking about
Juwan
Jawan Jennings, but Lee asked what you would rate Gorendo for the rest of the
Oh,
week, and you
just
started
for
talking
this week.
about you
My
started
bad.
talking
Yeah,
about
no.
Jawan Jennings.
Yeah, my bad. I just completely moved on. I would put Gorendo in the RB12 to RB like 18 range, like high end RB2. You?
I say back end RB1, honestly. I mean, the matchup is tough. It definitely is tough. But just the Niners are a run-based system, and I think if we do get into the we will get into the red zone, I think, against Chicago. We've had two awful scoring offensive weeks. We're going to score touchdowns this week. I at least hope so. You know, if we don't, then there's some serious issues going on. But I think he falls into the end zone just because he's the only running back who really is gonna, get those carries if we're giving one to the, red zone touches to RB.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have him around 10. Just no Jonathan Taylor, no Derrick Henry, no Joe Mixon. That opens up some space in that top 10 to 12 this week. I'd have him right around 10.
That's
But,
fair. I mean,
alright.
I think safe to say 10 through 16. Like that's where I really see him falling.
I feel you. So Juwan Jennings, I did have listed as a start. I'm honestly dropping him to at least flex. I think that he can have the big play, but I said Juwan Johnson earlier. I meant mix Juwan Jennings and Jalen Jalen Johnson. This is too hard for me. Too many J's. Juwan Jennings versus Jalen Johnson. I think he could lock him down. I think he's going to have a tough time. Debo Samuel, if he was looking like any version of his past self, I would say would blow up this game with no Christian McCaffrey. Going to get some work in the backfield. Going to mix into the short passing game. Doesn't look like himself. Would you guys start Debo Samuel?
No, Debo. Oh, Debo. He does not. Yeah, like you said, he does not look like himself. Any really, Jawan Jennings is the more safer one, but I'm saying like Jawan Jennings, Debo, and Ricky Pearsall. You're just between those three. You're really hoping for a big play. That's it. One of them will get a big play, but who is it going to be? That's what you're really asking for.
I know they're top end against wide receivers. Where does the Bears D rank against tight ends?
24th.
George
Kittle's
Kittle
gonna have a game.
masterclass. Are we having a George Kittle masterclass week? Probably.
It sounds
I mean,
like it's about.
he was pissed off. He only got 2 targets last week. He was pissed. I've never seen him like complain about his target share like that.
I mean, there's no reason for him not to, though. Like
Everyone else
McCaffrey
is
goes
looking
down at
bad.
some point. There's no Brandon Ayuk. Juwan Jennings didn't have like as big of a game. It's like, why are we not going to George Kittle as much as we can?
Oh, yeah.
think
I've
Buffalo's
never
deep.
seen him call out like play calling like that ever in his career. He
Yeah.
was mad.
Oh man. So let's go to the next one though. We got yeah, we covered it all. Pearsall doesn't need to be talked about, and we're all starting Kittle. We got the Sunday night football game here, boys. Chargers at Chiefs. Chiefs are favored by 3.5 points. Fun divisional game here for the Sunday night matchup. Over under at 42.5. Sitting a whole bunch in this game, to be honest. Herbert, Gus Edwards, Kamani Vidal, Josh Palmer, Will Disley, and then even on the other side of the ball, Kareem Hunt, and I would say I'd throw Xavier Worthy as a sit, but Mason's got him as a flex. All those guys were going to be sat for the most part. Since we got to that like a little bit of a disagreement, Xavier Worthy, do you want to talk about that? Mason, why would you flex him?
Just the upside because he's got that chance of getting that deep ball. If you want the upside play, that's really it.
Right. Yeah. All or nothing kind of play. Lee, where do you sit on the fence?
Yeah, yeah, I don't want to play him. Not if I can
Play him.
help it. I think the Chargers win this game outright.
Ooh.
I
That's a
don't.
good bet.
Worthy's just so inconsistent. He just really hasn't adjusted to the NFL game. Doesn't have that connection. It's going to take a gadget play for him to really make that difference.
Do you guys want to know who I've honestly been thinking Xavier Worthy could end up having a career similar to?
Who?
Ted Ginn Jr. Just that
Oh no.
fast
That's a
guy who's going to
terrible.
end up, he's that rookie who's got that boom right now, so they're using him a little more. But he's with Patrick Mahomes, and he's not taken off as an elite guy. I mean, dude, once Rashee Rice comes back, you think Worthy's going to get much catches? No. Well, who knows when Rashee Rice is honestly going to come back at this point. But, dude, Worthy might just be that fast guy who's going to get that random deep catch. That might be his career.
Right? I mean, we've never seen too much success off the bat from a rookie in Andy Reid's offense. But even like last year, towards the end of the year, Rashee Rice started showing what he could be in this offense. Worthy hasn't done that with any competition. At this point, Noah Gray's getting about the same amount of targets as Xavier Worthy is in the last like 4 or 5 games. So I have a hard time starting him. I did get him in the late first round in a dynasty league this year. So I was content when I got him late first, but I've been unhappy so far with having to mix him in the back part of my lineup. Um, on the other side of the ball, though, I mean, okay, we'll stay on the Chiefs side. It's interesting because you have the same comment, Mason, for Matthew Stafford as you did Patrick Mahomes, and who would think that you're saying that right now? But Patrick Mahomes, you got and like not too happy to start him. And I also have him listed as a low end quarterback one. It's not promising. Lee, do you have like anything that goes against that, like high or low on him?
Yeah, I'm starting him for sure. And I mean, he had looked better. Started coming around a little bit. I think it was a bit of a down week last week, maybe. But still, I'm starting him. There's too many top end quarterbacks that are missing. I would start him over Will Levis, obviously. But yeah, I'm starting him.
That is ridiculous that we're even like that sentence is uttered. I agree with you. But yeah,
Patrick Mahomes is not going to lose you your fantasy week, but he's probably also not going to win it.
right. Only big games in the last 4 weeks are against Carolina and Buffalo. Carolina, obviously, an easy matchup, and then Buffalo is going to be a shootout. Um,
Yeah.
Last week against the Raiders, I really expected him to pop. Ton of passing attempts, 306 yards, just the one touchdown and no passing yards. So I
Yeah, that was
low
only
end
his
quarterback.
second. That was only his second game all season with at least 300.
That it's concerning. And Pacheco's now into his third week back in the lineup. Um, Chargers are a tough matchup across the board. They're top 10 against quarterback, running back, and tight ends. Number one against tight ends. So might be another reason why it could be tough sledding for Patrick Mahomes. Last few weeks, the majority of the targets have been going to Kelsey and Gray. So if they're going to lock down the tight end position, that's going to make that tougher for him. Basically, everyone we have here, though, like Pacheco, Hopkins. Oh no, Mason, you got Hopkins as a sit. I Chargers, the one area where they're a little bit weak is the wide receiver position. They're 16th against wide receivers. And it feels like Hopkins, to me, he's the only option of the wide receivers. I would rather start him over Worthy, but you're the opposite way around.
Yeah, I just think it's just going to be another very gritty game. I mean, Chiefs will probably win. What's the spread? 3.5. Yeah, so they'll probably win by 3. They won't cover the spread. So they're probably going to win by 3. 17-14 type game. I'd rather take the chance on Worthy getting the deep ball than Hopkins getting the consistent ball fed to him.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I do get it. I mean,
They're
I
both
feel like,
risky plays. I mean, I think there's just a lot. There's a lot of better options than both of them.
right? I just feel like despite their MO, like Hopkins is considered more of the possession wide receiver, but last year in Tennessee, he was used downfield. Worthy, obviously coming out of college with all that speed, looks like the downfield guy, but he hasn't averaged more than 12 yards per target since week 4. More than 12 and a half yards per target, which is like pretty average. And he's sitting more at like the 7 range for most of these weeks. I don't know. I would like to see Worthy mixed in downfield. It doesn't feel like the Chiefs offense does that so much anymore since teams scheme against it. Lee, Worthy, or Hopkins?
Hopkins.
Word. So rest of them we pretty much covered here. We are moving on to the last game of the night. We have made it
Did we do
through
the
all
Chargers?
13 games. What?
Did we do the Chargers?
Yeah. Didn't we? We didn't talk about McConkey. So we talked about the sits, but McConkey and Johnston. Thank you for catching that. McConkey is questionable. Didn't practice on Wednesday. Came down with an injury last game. It's got right now both knee and shoulder listed on it. Without having any insider information, I don't think he's going to play this game. It just it looked tough. He's a smaller guy, and I don't know. I don't think he's going to end up playing. Keep your eye out for the injury report, and by all means, start him if he plays. But the only way I'm starting Quentin Johnson is if McConkey misses, and then if McConkey starts, I'm starting McConkey and no Quentin. Muted.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, McConkey only. Just tough defense, I think, to really trust Quentin Johnson. And I mean, yeah, he might get 5 passes thrown to him. One of them might be a bad pass. One of them he'll probably drop. But I just don't think the volume is necessarily going to be there. I think it's going to be. I mean, these two teams are just built about just tough fighting games. It's not really not two teams that rely off of big plays. It's just going to be a tough game.
So one, McConkey has been outstanding, and I think he's gone a little bit under the radar because of the offense and being out there in LA. And I mean, they're not a super flashy team, but just over the last 3 weeks, I mean, you're talking 21 catches for a little over 300 yards for the season. He's got 58 catches on 815 yards, 4 touchdowns. For a rookie that still has a quarter of the season left, his stock has risen tremendously. I mean, we're talking. Is his stock above Ramadunze right now? Probably. You got Neighbors and Harrison in front of him. Thomas Jr. maybe. He's either 3 or 4 in that wide receiver class right now.
So I started the season like pre-draft at 4. I had him above Brian Thomas Jr. and everyone talks shit.
Okay, I'm pretty sure you were a lot higher on McConkey than all of us.
Very high on McConkey.
Okay, I feel like I do remember that.
Yeah, like weirdly high. But it felt like everything lined up. I love Herbert. There's nobody else here. The worry was Harbaugh and the really low passing volume coming into
Michigan
play.
style offense.
Right. And that is something to be worried about. And we did see it at the beginning of the season. And that'll affect some things, but everything gets blown out of proportion in the offseason. If a coach comes in talking about being a run first offense, all of a sudden people think that Justin Herbert's going to throw the ball 15 times a game. And that's not a reality.
At least, a bad quarterback not throwing the ball much in the NFL is 25 times. That's when you look at it and you're
right. And it's Herbert, even if it was 20, 25 times with the wide receiver core and tight end group around him, even the running backs, there's just nobody else on this team. So, and even Quentin Johnson's been more involved than I thought he would be this season. So love McConkey and agree. I think right now I'd have him as wide receiver 3 above Odunze just because he's already showing it. But Odunze still has that top end potential. I love his talent.
I don't know why. I was just thinking about this. Can you imagine if the Chargers drafted Brock Bowers? Oh my God.
I thought that was going to happen too. Because
it was, oh my God, it was right there.
It was right in the
stars. Neighbors too, to be honest. I mean,
nah, dude, McConkey's working.
Well, I guess they couldn't have gotten Bowers either.
Neighbors went 4. Bowers
right. I mean, they would
have Neighbors was there. Neighbors was there for the Chargers.
Neighbors went 6, right? Yeah.
Chargers picked 5th. They picked alt.
And they went alt.
I'm not.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that would have been interesting for sure.
And then Bowers went 11 because everyone thought the Jets were going to go Bowers at 9 or whatever, and then they drafted Joe Alt was the right pick. Or whatever. What's his name?
Joe Alt was the right pick, though. Honestly, I was thinking if they traded up from the 2nd round, because
but it's not the juicy fantasy pick.
Yeah, right. I'm being boring. Who cares about keeping Justin Herbert on his feet?
I mean, it worked for the Bengals when they went Chase over Sewell.
I think there's an argument to be made for both of them. It's
I mean, has it worked though? The Bengals are what, 5-7 or whatever? Or?
That's this year, but they went to a Super Bowl based on that pick.
So it's interesting because I mean, to each their own, but like we've seen Burrow go down a couple times since they drafted Chase to injury. Maybe that doesn't happen if he's better protected. And then also, like Mason's talking about the record, how much does a wide receiver add versus a left tackle? How many top tier left tackles are there in comparison to wide receivers? Not a lot to Jamar Chase's status. That, like, for sure, he's got to be number. I'm saying if you're putting like age is not a factor, number 3, I would still put Tyreek above him if you're just talking about this year alone.
I don't know that you can this year. I mean, I don't obviously Tua wasn't there, but I mean, just if you take those games out, Tyreek hasn't.
Swap the teams for the players. Throw Chase on the Dolphins and then like Tyreek on the Bengals. Like,
dude, Joe Burrow.
Tyreek on the Bengals, bro.
Dude, Joe Burrow chucking the ball to Tyreek would literally be like, Olympic team, let's make this happen. Let's go.
Right.
And then if like Joe Burrow to Tyreek Hill, oh my God.
It would be insane. And then if you had like Chase getting targets from freaking Tyler Huntley and Skylar Thompson for 4 or 5 games, his numbers would tank too.
I'm just saying, with the games with Tua, Tyreek has been very disappointing for the most part.
For the most part, since they've come back. Did Tyreek not start hot?
He had one good game to start the season.
Yeah, I think it was week 1. He came out and you were just like, "Oh yeah, Tyreek, this is what I drafted you for," and then it's just been downhill since then. And even last week, he was like decent game, but it's not Tyreek production. Like
no, for sure. I mean, especially when you draft him to be, a top 3
he got
wide
drafted as the
receiver.
101 in some leagues.
Some leagues, you're right. Yeah, like I mean, bare minimum top 3 wide receiver pick in everyone's league. He's wide receiver 20 right now.
Think about this: top 3 picks. It went usually CMC, Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb.
CeeDee Lamb, yeah, I saw CeeDee Lamb go 101 in a lot of leagues.
I mean, yeah, but which of those have those been good top 3 picks?
Dude, even the year before that, like, wasn't it like?
Well, JJ was unanimous.
Or JJ, Austin Eckler.
JJ was hurt for most of that
Yeah,
season.
it was Eckler. It was Eckler.
Eckler was 102.
Eckler was up there
and like died on the field.
And then was Saquon up there? No, Tyreek might have been, or no, Jamar. It might have been Jamar.
Jamar, I think it was Jamar and Justin Jefferson were 1 or 2.
Yeah, I know JJ was unanimous number 1 though. Like there, and CMC was like back end of the first round.
So just to reel it back,
crazy man. Fantasy is you gotta look at that stuff
because we're getting late. Quentin Johnson was the other one, and I know you said he's been more involved than you thought. I just took a quick peek.
The last 2 weeks has been terrible.
Not just the last 2 weeks. I was gonna hit on that, and I know he did miss a little bit of time, but 24 catches for 366. And 6 touchdowns, which has been redeeming in some instance. But for a guy that was a first-round pick last year, and he was kind of left for dead. So again, I would agree he's been better. He couldn't have been worse than he was last year, but that's still pretty eh. And then the last 2 weeks, 2 receptions on 4 targets for 12 yards and a fumble just to lose you back, those 2 points for the catches, and then 0 catches on 5 targets the week before. So a combined, if we're keeping score there, 9 targets for 2 catches and 12 yards over 2 games. Woof.
And it's been against Atlanta and Baltimore, who are pass funnel defenses.
I'm not starting him, even if Ladd's out.
Oh, definitely not starting him at all. If McConkey misses, I'll throw him in the hopes that he gets that touchdown just in the flex. But yeah, it's ugly. I don't think that Quentin Johnson starting the season going into it, I did not think that he was going to have a role. I thought Joshua Palmer was going to outplay him. I thought that DJ Shark was going to outplay him. So I really had such low expectations for QJ after that rookie season. Also, I think it was like at least as far as I've tracked on reception perception. And boys, it's been like 10 weeks since I've said that word at least. So like, give me a little credit. But yeah. Oh yeah, shit. We got to take a drink. Mason, you are muted still, but I saw. So yeah, he had the worst numbers I think I've ever seen on reception perception. I believe everything was under 10%, the 10th percentile. So not starting QJ unless McConkey is out, but willing to flex him. Did we touch the Chiefs side of the ball?
Yeah, we did them first.
Let's go. We did it. Oh, God damn it. So we got the Cincinnati at Dallas. We got one game left. We're almost through this. We got Cincinnati at Dallas. Dallas is the underdog by 5 points, over under 49.5 points. Start everybody on Cincy. Joe Burrow, Chase Brown, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Mike Gesicki, I even think is a back end start. And then on the other side of the ball, clear sits, Brandon Cooks, Jalen Tolbert, Jake Ferguson, Luke Schoonmaker if Ferguson is out. And then Rico Dowdle, not so clear. He had a decent game last week, like dud game the week before. Since he's kind of middle of the pack in most categories, or no, just against running back, they're 16th, dead middle of the pack, but they are 30th, 28th, and 25th in all other categories. So terrible against quarterback, tight end, and wide receiver. I think Cooper Rush can be sneaky. I think Rico Dowdle can be sneaky. Where do you guys sit? Lee, I'll kick it your way.
Yeah, I don't mind starting either one. I would start Will Levis over Cooper Rush, but I think he's clearly a guy you start in Superflex with all the other guys out. And
Yeah.
I mean, this Cincinnati defense has been so bad. Mason talked about their record this year when we were talking about that draft pick. Unless Penei Sewell was going to play defense for him as well, he wouldn't have helped them this year. They can't stop anybody. Joe Burrow's had an MVP caliber season, and it's just lost because of how poorly the defense have played. Full reset coming. They can't pay T. Higgins because they better pay some guys to play defense. Rico Dowdle, again, Cooper Rush is your quarterback, so they're going to run the ball. He had a pretty good game last week, like you said. Yeah, I would start Rico Dowdle for sure. Cooper Rush if I was desperate.
Mason?
I like Cooper Rush. I mean, just look at how look at the Steelers traditionally are a very conservative style team, and just look at what they did against the Bengals last week. Like Lee said, Joe Burrow is having this MVP caliber year, but the record is terrible. I mean, what more do you want Joe Burrow to do? Like, realistically, what more can you ask of a guy? And they're losing. This defense is bad.
Yeah.
Can he play safety?
If you want him to hurt himself again for like the 20th time since he's played with the Bengals.
And he's down. And he's gone.
What a tackle. That's it for the season.
Oh no. He's he's not moving. So yeah, I think that Cooper Rush is sneaky. That being said, like there's almost no situation where you're gonna be forced to start him in a 1 QB league. I do think that a DFS start throw in a tournament league definitely could, it could hit. He's done decent the last 2 weeks. 13.8 points and 21.9 points against Giants and Washington, respectively. So not great, not terrible. Could do worse. Rico Dowdle, though, I think at this point they've learned to move on from Zeke. So he'll get fed at least. He'll get the volume. If he falls in the end zone, definitely worthwhile. That is about all. Unless anyone else has anything else to add? Nope. All right. So
Lee, you better say it.
What?
It's week 14.
You're right. You have to say it. What are we heading into? The fantasy
playoffs?
Playoffs? Playoffs? Mason.
I thought you wanted me to say fuck you, Mason. I was like, that's kind of weird.
Mason, you got to chime. Mason, you got to chime. We've all done it.
Playoffs?
There we go. We're ending it now.